All right, guys. Well, here we go. We're working our way to the end here. Um, Maybe it could be the end times since we were just talking about that, or the end of our class. We'll see which happens first. You will be praying for you'll be praying for the end times, probably, right? Before class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come quickly, Lord.
It feels like end
Maranatha.
times for me. Woo.
You're in the you're in a tribulation, right? Well, my plan here in these sessions, in fact, let me just show you what I'm thinking here. As far as schedule, a plan for today's class, I want to discuss the our schedule here moving forward um, with the Zoom classes and things. Just quickly go over the assignments for for module 5 leading up to module 6, and then I want to review the first assignment because it's been a while since we've done epistles, at least in class, right? It's been over 4 years since we've done epistles. So I wanted to, since we're going back to epistles now with Second Timothy, which thankfully will be much, well, I think you'll now see it'll be much easier to do the epistle than the other ones, right? You're praising God, we're back in the epistles. Um, but I would like to, I've got on Canvas, I've posted all your assignments for with examples. So what I wanted to do was go over, review those each week with you, as well as doing some of the work on part of the diagramming assignment with you for Second Timothy, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the goal is just really to make sure you're fresh, reminded of what's required on the assignments for this module. And again, also the other good news for this module is you only have one passage to work on, not two. So that's good. And I know some of you have, past assignments you're working on from the previous modules, but I did want to focus our attention in our Zoom sessions leading up to module 6. I wanted to focus our attention on the assignments, and then also helping you with the diagramming as well. Okay, so make sure you have some tissue for the nosebleed time. And actually today we probably won't have much of that, but starting next week, make sure to bring your tissue with you, and we'll be doing that together. And as usual, as always, guys, stop me anytime with any question that you have. All right, that's my biggest desires. I want to make sure your questions are answered. So again, don't think you may be the only one with the question and then not ask. If it comes to your mind, just ask. We know each other well enough. We don't need to be embarrassed about any questions. But I really want to make sure there's no questions in your mind. Pastor Arn, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Pastor. Sorry I'm late. My signal is very weak.
No problem. Were you having your Coke? Not yet. I should have worn my Coca-Cola shirt. I have a Coca-Cola shirt. I should have worn that maybe next time. I was showing the other guys today I'm wearing my Cebu shirt, but we'll have to get Cagayan de Oro when I come back. Oh, one other thing, I am in contact with Pastor Marvin, so we're going to meet soon and talk about, I'm going to see if he's going to be available for to come in November. So we'll just pray for that. He hasn't, we're going to talk about it. He's going to let me know if his schedule will allow. So keep that in prayer. Okay, so let's first discuss our schedule here. Again, a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. So we'll just plan our ways and see how the Lord directs. Uh, I put down here our recent module in class that we did, May 1st to 5th, and then starting today, 16th, through June 22nd, we'll have our Zoom classes at our regular time. There will be a break from that for a time because I'm going to be doing some traveling in June, but August we'll be able to resume our Zoom classes together and have a few more. So, but we'll be able to do I think at least six sessions together here in May and June. I put down here as well, just wanted to give you guys some target dates just to keep in front of you. July 1st being when all the Module 3 assignments need to be done. All right, so some of you have those you need to do. Some of you have a few from Module 2 as well, I think. But target July 1st to be caught up through Module 3. Now, that doesn't mean you guys who already have done through Module 3 don't have to do anything for the next couple of months. You should be working all of you have assignments. Some of you have just assignments for Module 5. Some of you have other ones, but everyone's got assignments to work on, so don't wait. Then August 1st, we'll be starting our Zoom classes again. September 1st, all the Module 4 assignments are due. So again, I'm just giving you some ideas, some milestones, some targets to try to shoot for. And then October 1st is when I have all the Module 5 written assignments due. And then by November 1st, all assignments of everything, all the reading assignments, the sermons that some of you have to complete from the poetic or the Zechariah sermon, those need to get done by November 1st. Everything's got to be done so that you're ready to preach your Second Timothy sermon in Module 6, as well as your, several of you have your Revelation sermon as well. So for Module 6, some of you will be preaching two sermons, your Revelation sermon and your Second Timothy sermon. If you owe me sermons from Zechariah or Proverbs or Psalms, you'll need to record those and send them to me. And I've already messaged those of you who need to do that. But so this is just to give you a general idea of what's going to happen here in the next few months, at least the plan. And if you can maintain these target dates, you'll be in very good shape to be finished for November 18th, which is, Lord willing, our graduation. So we'll keep that in front of us as our target. November 18th. So that's a Saturday. And as we get closer to that, we'll discuss more about the details, what's going to happen there as well. Okay. So that's again our plan moving forward. All right. Any questions on that? The schedule? Hopefully that's clear enough. So from now until late June, we'll be going over key concepts, reviewing assignments for Module 5, and then diagramming, keep trying to practice a little bit on that each week. Okay? All right. Well, as we discussed on the last day of class, I just wanted to remind you of the assignments. We've got 7 reading assignments that are about 140 pages, something like, 100, no, not that many, 37, 56, 76, 91. No, it's a little over 100 pages, so it's not too bad. And again, I gave you articles from different time periods on preaching. So all the articles are related to preaching. So I found them to be interesting, and I hope that they will be helpful to you. I also gave you a couple of optional ones. So again, those won't be graded. However, just to let you know, if you do read the optional assignments, you get extra credit. All right. So just for those of you who like extra credit, I make that available to you. As well as I think there's 2 optional readings for Module 4. The same thing applies. You get extra credit for those, so that'll help boost your grade a little bit if you choose to do those, but they're not required. All right. So those are all the reading assignments. One of my favorites, the Simplicity in Preaching, I really like from Ryle. I really enjoy that one. And then I think one of the books I like most on preaching is from Michael Fabarez. And so that's a chapter from that book. And by the way, we did get permission from him to print his book here in the Philippines, or at least distribute it. So I'll try to get you a copy of that book as a whole. He gave us permission to use it, so we should be able to get it at a very small price or even free. So I'll let you know about that. All right. So those are the reading assignments. And what I recommended for those of you who are a little behind on assignments is I recommended to wait on the reading assignments until the end. Do the written assignments first, because these reading assignments won't really help you for the written assignments. They would for the sermon manuscript as you put the sermon together. But I'd recommend do the written assignments first, at least up through the sermon manuscript, and then do the reading assignments. All right. Make sure to do both, but as far as priority, do the written assignments so that you can be preparing that'll help you preparing your sermon, at least for the content, and then you can do the reading assignments. Again, that's my recommendation. You can do what you want, but I think that might be, or if you want to mix it up, if you do a written assignment, then do a reading assignment just to do something different, that's up to you. Let's see. For the written assignments, just to remind you, again, we will only have one passage. So you're only going to do one set of assignments. So it's going to be the typical assignments that we've done before. The only addition are these 2 assignments here, where we'll be focusing on diagramming. The first assignment will be to identify the connector words in the whole letter of 2 Timothy. So not just your passage, but the whole letter. Okay. So that's going to take a little bit of time, and then diagram the whole letter, not just your preaching passage, but you're going to diagram the whole letter, the whole book of 2 Timothy. All right. Those are going to be the unique part. Before, what I just gave you was diagram of your passage, and then that was it. But this time you're doing the whole book, because we really want you, once you finish this course, we really want you to be more comfortable with diagramming. All right. It's definitely the more challenging part of the course, but I think it's one of the most important steps in studying, especially the instructive passages, as we've talked about. So that's why I wanted to have you do the whole letter. And 2, it will prepare you, I think, better for the messages. One thing that I realized, guys, with the diagramming, thankfully somebody taught me how to diagram when I was a new Christian. And it was super hard. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd come to our Bible study, and we'd be diagramming First Peter, and I'm like, for a few months, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. How is this helping me? Even as an American speaking English, I got nosebleeds. Okay, so, but I realized after I kept at it and practiced that I got, a little bit better at it, a little more comfortable, and I kept practicing. And what I realized is it significantly improved my ability to understand sermons, because I would be practicing, and then when I come to church, I listened to John MacArthur preach or one of the other preachers at Grace, and I would find out the passage. I would diagram it before he started preaching. And then as he was preaching through the text, just by me diagramming it, really increased my ability to follow him, to understand him, and to get a lot more out of the passage. So diagramming helped me not only in studying a text, it helped me in listening to sermons. And I got so much more out of it by doing that. So there's really a lot of value in this. Not just, this isn't just a Taya thing because we just like diagramming and want to force you to do this. It actually has a lot of value because it forces you to try to understand how the author's putting his passage together, how the verses fit, how everything works, what his structure is. And like I said, I gained so much in my sermon listening by doing diagramming. And so I was doing it as a newer Christian I wasn't studying for any preaching or teaching at all. I was a new believer, but I just did the diagramming because well, it was our small group Bible study requirement, but also it just helped me so much in getting a lot more out of the sermons. So there's a lot of value in it if you can stick with it. And so that's why I've put two assignments that, to focus on doing the whole letter, because I think the more you practice this, the more it's going to help you, not just in your teaching or understanding the passage, but even in how you listen to sermons. And even sometimes, guys, nowadays I don't diagram beforehand, but I know I can see the diagram in the text. So when I'm listening to the sermon, I'm just thinking that way. Like, oh, here's a conjunction for. It's going to connect to something he said before. I wonder what it connects to. And then the preacher talks about here. Paul is describing, what he's just said in verses 2 and 3. So I'm already thinking like that. So then I'm just able to get more out of the sermon. Unless it's a topical message and somebody's just doing eisegesis, then it doesn't help us. But I don't like those sermons anyway. So, in any case, I'm just trying to promote diagramming one more time with you guys and explaining why I've made an entire two assignments just focused on that aspect. All right, but everything else, really everything, all the assignments, there's nothing new. There's no new concept. There's no new type of assignment that's different than what you've done before. Everything is the same, but with just the diagramming part, we've just expanded it, made it a longer assignment. All right, but you'll have word studies, textual observations, context. Everything else is exactly the same. Okay. Questions or comments about that? All right. Well, let's do the following then. Let me just briefly go over a couple of things by way of review, and then I'll go over the first module 5 assignment with you. Just review what's required from it and see if you have any questions on that. Again, we've seen this before. Hopefully this should be very, very familiar to you at this point. This is the both the exegetical and expositional process for expository sermons. The upper part, again, is the exegesis, steps 1 to 8. And that just covers all of the part of the process where we draw out the author's intended meaning from the passage. All right. So these 8 steps are going step by step through the process of trying to understand the author's intended meaning. And again, we begin with the book level, that is looking at the book as a whole. And then we move towards the passage level after that, where we focus our attention specifically on the passage. All right, so the book level is the same as we've done for all the other modules. Read and observe, background context, and the contextual flow. That gives us the overall understanding of the background of the book, the occasion for the book, the purpose of the book, the flow of the book. And then we move towards the block diagram of the passage. That's where we now narrow our focus towards the text that we're studying. So that's the diagram, the textual observations, the word studies, then we look at resources, and all of that is drawing us to what I've highlighted here is the exegetical idea of the passage. Again, that's the author's intended meaning. That's the goal of our exegesis. That's what we're trying to figure out by our study, what the original author intended for his original audience to understand. All right, that's what we're after. And once we've got that, we now have a huge piece that we will be then prepared to teach. All right, once we've got the author's intended meaning, that's the Holy Spirit inspired meaning from the author. We're now ready to turn our attention from the author's world to our world, from the author and his audience to ourselves and our audience, our congregation, or Bible study, or prayer group, or whatever context you're teaching in. And so to get from the author's world to our world, that's where we talked about the timeless truths. All right, that those doctrinal truths that apply for every person in every situation in every culture in all time, that never changes. Those truths that are the basis of the author's point, those are what connect us to his world. All right. Now, how he applies those truths may be different than how they would apply to our congregation. But identifying those truths that's our link. That's our bridge from the author's world to ours. And then, of course, once we've done that, once we've identified the author's main point, once we've identified the timeless truths, then the meditation on the passage, that's that personal effort to dwell on the text ourselves, to consider how the passage applies to us, to think about how we should respond, to seek God's help in understanding the passage and being able to communicate it, and all those things. We've focused on the head stuff up to that point, and in that step, meditation, we focus on our heart. Okay, so we've been using our head all the way up till now, but then this step is focusing on the heart. Of course, we should be praying all the way through, but this step in particular will be where we just drop everything, don't think about anything else except what is the text really saying here, and especially what is the text saying to me? What does God want me to learn from it? As we discussed in our leaders meeting on Saturday there, leaders are also sheep, and we need to be led by the Lord, taught, directed, encouraged, exhorted, helped, just as much as every other person in the church. And just because you and I are teachers, or maybe in the role of a pastor or elder or leader, that does not mean we don't need the same things. And this is a huge, huge trap for leaders in the church. I've fallen into it. Perhaps you guys have too, where you just have the mentality of, okay, I'm preparing lessons, preparing teachings, preparing sermons, and the focus is always studying with the intent to teach, studying to teach, studying to teach. And I can skip the step of studying to learn and apply and then teach, right? You remember Ezra? He studied the law of the Lord. He set his heart to study the law of the Lord, to practice it, then to teach it. And as teachers, we can fall into the trap of just being a teacher, not a student. And that's, if you let that go on for a long time, you begin to disconnect your personal life and your holiness from the scripture, because now you're just a teacher. And I've seen a lot of guys, you wonder how pastors fall or how pastors get involved in all kinds of things. That's how. So, brothers, I just want to remind you, encourage you, don't just be a teacher, be a student. And you know what I mean by that, right? Yeah. It's not just learning. Obviously, it's learning with the intent to apply. James 1, doers of the word, not just hearers. But I just really, of anything on a personal basis that I want to make sure you guys were reminded of by me, it's that. It's don't just be a teacher, don't just be an elder or a pastor or a church leader. Be a sheep. And then yes, we have that responsibility to teach and instruct and guide and shepherd, and that's great. And you know, the Lord wants that, wants guys like that in the church, but we are not above needing to hear what we teach. So anyway, that's the meditation step. That's put in there on purpose to remind us of this important truth that we need to apply the passage first to ourselves before we direct it to our hearers. Um, that's step 10, the meditation. And all this is to lead us now to the creating, we call the homiletical idea. Again, remember, the exegetical idea is the author's intended meaning, the what, why, and how. Um, and remember, the what and the why is what what is the point of the passage? Why is why he's making that point, and then the how is just his outline. Okay. The homiletical idea is a little bit different. This is the sermon main point and outline. Okay, it's derived from the exegetical idea and the timeless truths, but it is now just the sermon main point. What's the main point of your sermon? And the subpoints, the outline points of that message. All right. And that all comes from the exegetical idea along with the timeless truths, and then directing them towards your hearers. Now, this step 11, create the homiletical idea, is a critical step as well, because once you have that, the sermon actually isn't, if you've done a good job and a thorough job of coming up with your main point and your outline, the sermon really flows a lot easier from that. Yeah, you may need to work at illustration or an application, but at least you know where you're going. If you thought about, okay, this is my main focus in the sermon, this is my main point, and here's my three outline points or whatever, you have the structure of your sermon. It's it's put together, it's ready. Now you just fill it in. You fill it in with those 6 P's, right? Each outline point has the proof, right? The explanation, the argumentation, the persuasion, the illustration, the application. Okay, those are all, that's the meat. But if you've got the bones, then you're really, you know where you're headed. But if you don't have that, then it's just, it makes the sermon a lot harder to put together. So, uh, homiletical idea, very, very important, very helpful. You need to know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, then your congregation is not going to know where you're going. That's for sure. All right. Okay. And then finally, putting that sermon manuscript together from that homiletical idea, and then preaching the text. All right. Those are pulpit notes, and then you're ready to preach the sermon. So none of these steps, if you finished all 13 of these steps, that's great, but you're still not you're not done, right? Because you got to preach the message, you got to preach the sermon. So these steps here that are presented are just in preparation for the main event, which is the preaching of the text. And that's a whole I should have added another, line here for the homiletics. Right? That's the preaching of the passage. All right, well, that's really the third piece of the process here. The first piece is you have to put on your kind of your academic hat and study the text and do all of the technical stuff that we've been doing together with the grammar and diagramming and the context and the background and word studies and all that stuff. That's the academic hat. You got to be able to extract, to study, to understand the author's meaning. Then there's the communicator. Well, what would it be? More, I guess which hat would this be for the putting the sermon together? I guess the writer's hat, where you got to be able to take what you've learned and clearly, write it out, represent it, explain it so that in the sermon so that your hearers can understand. So you got to write it out in a thoughtful, structured, clear way. That's a different hat. That's the writer's hat. And then the third hat you put on is, once you've completed the sermon, now you've got the preacher hat, the communicator hat, which is communicating that message. And so a good sermon requires all three of those elements, all three of those hats, doesn't it? The academic hat, the writer's hat, and then the communicator's hat. And I don't know if we talked about this, guys, but I think what's really helpful is you need to understand which of those hats you're strongest in and which of them you're weakest in. Okay? It's hard to be excellent at all three of those things. They're all three very different skill sets. There's the one skill set to study, right? So if you're good with language, if you're good with reading comprehension, if you're good with using study tools, you'll do well with that. But some of us aren't. Some of it's a lot of work to figure out, to understand, to study. And then there's the writing hat, where you're putting the thoughts together in a clear way to present them. That's a different skill set. That's the ability of someone to explain something in a simple way, a clear way, a logical way. That's a different hat, a different skill than being able to study. And then to communicate that clearly to your hearers, that's another skill set. The ability to speak, to present in a way that's clear, easy to follow, easy to listen to. It's interesting. Maybe you have experienced this. I have um, listened to several preachers or several guys who were good, excellent authors, but not very good preachers. In fact, a couple of them I would say are pretty bad at preaching. Their books are amazing, easy to follow, easy to understand. I think of one guy in particular. He's dead now, but he's one of my favorite authors. I love his books, but I listen to him speak, and man, he's really hard to listen to. It's like, oh, well, this guy's pretty boring. He kind of spoke in a very casual, flat voice and didn't really change his inflection and sighed a lot when he spoke and then paused. And man, he was hard to follow. So I was like, after listening to him, I go, man, if he just got up there and read his book, that would have been better than what he did. But it just reminds us that different skill sets. So you need to know the one you're weakest at so you can work at that more. Some of you guys are really good at studying, but have a harder time speaking. Some of you guys are excellent speakers, but have a harder time putting thoughts together in a clear way. Some of you, are good at two of those things, but one of them not as good. So it's important though to work at all three of those. Because remember, again, guys, what's the goal of our sermons? First, that they're accurate. Second, that they're clear. And third, really, that they are engaging, passionate, interesting. That's the speaking part. And then, of course, applicable. All right, I'm doing all the talking right now. What are your thoughts about that, guys? Anything we covered, but especially just even that last discussion on those three skill sets. Have you found that? Do you guys know, each of you know where you need to work at the most, or what have you thought about that yourselves, where you're of those three skill sets? Um, where do you find the biggest challenge for you in those three things: the studying, the writing, the putting together the thoughts, and then the preaching? Anybody want to express maybe where they found the biggest challenge with those? Oh,
The communication part, Pastor Tim. The preaching,
yeah,
the act of preaching, translating it to understandable words, or in a way that words are cohesive, they cohere, and the flow is like, it's really progressing, and with punchlines, something like that, and uh, clarity towards the until the conclusion part. Until now, I'm still learning the whole thing, especially now in
yeah,
Thea.
yeah. Thanks for sharing that. How about
Also,
you, Kaz? Oh,
the
sorry.
thing
Go
that
ahead.
you said about the skill in writing, and it's another skill when you communicate it. I feel that, I understand that those are two different things. You can be, because in writing you can edit, you can rephrase your words, but when it's time for preaching, it's really challenging.
Yeah, yeah. I also comes to mind a few guys, couple guys, one in particular who's really, really good communicating. Very, very intelligent. Really could hold your attention, but he wasn't good at. He wasn't clear. Like, it was hard to follow his line of thought from the text. Um, he would be great, he would tell very interesting stories, or have interesting insights, but they often weren't necessarily directly connected to the passage. So it's like, if you're looking at the text and you listen to him, you're like, okay, where is he getting this from? But he's very interesting to listen to, but he didn't do, so he was really good at communication, and he was good at study, very, very intelligent, but the clarity, that making it easy to follow him, that he wasn't very good at that. So, um, but yeah, you can also be very good at putting thoughts together clearly, but you know, speaking those forth in a way that is easy to follow is can be a challenge for sure. How about you, Kazo? What would you say of those three? Where would you see see yourself?
For me, Pastor Tim, it's also the skills in communication, because sometimes I fail to properly uh, express, or I don't really have the technique to communicate. Then also sometimes I have this weakness that maybe I used to read, then I have also this tendency to have this monotone, and that is, I think, one of my weakness. But I think if I can talk in our own dialect, I can express better.
Yeah, I could see that. Anyone else? I don't know. Where do you see how would you evaluate yourself with those three areas?
Me, Pastor Kim. Hello, Pastor Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
For me, I've been praying to God that I wish I could speak like you, because I have this weakness in expressing myself. I wish I could speak like Mark Dever, if you know him, Body Bocam, Donald Carson, Alistair Begg. Maybe that's too much for it's like an impossible dream.
You want to be a combination of all those guys? That would be interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
How about you, Nor? What would you?
I need to improve all of the above.
All three?
All,
Oh boy, you're in trouble.
every Sunday is a Lord, your grace is sufficient for me. Your power is perfect in my weakness.
But is it sufficient for everyone else? That's the question. Of course it is. Yeah, and obviously we could all of us should say, we haven't perfected any one of those three areas, but certainly it's important to understand where which one needs the most work of the three. All of them, we should be improving in, but we should really understand probably the one we need the most work at to give that priority. But I hear what you're saying. Pastor Arn, who's been reborn, what would you say?
Hello, Pastor. Actually, my weakest point as a one is my speaking ability. Since when I was in high school and in college, that's what the weakest point in my life. It is hard for me to express what I have understood, what the teachers taught me. Then I believe so when the Lord called me to the ministry, I always reason to the Lord. This is my weakest point, Lord. I will not. It is your will. Remain me in my work, and it is good for me to give tithes to the church, but the Lord, the Lord uh, gave me something that it is hard for me to understand for His will. Yung He gave what we call that a disease that cannot be healed until I finally surrendered to the Lord. That was my reason why I did not like to be like this. But praise God, even though my weaknesses during my speaking ability, but the Lord brought many people under my care. That is His uh, job. I'm always following what is uh, the thing that He me to do for the ministry. That's pastor.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, James?
To be also constructive for communication, siyempre with as told a while ago, vernacular, I could express more. I could be easily more, ano, uh, in vernacular. So the problem in English, I have that difficulty, but in vernacular, my God, we have this because we have this experiences, so uh, we can easily put it in our routine. So about communication, I have no problem in the church where I'm in now. The only thing my struggle is even when I'm still in my college days or this in my high school days, reading is my weakness. Reading so my struggle like to read extra resources.
Yeah.
Like actually I was blessed friend give me books. I have so many books here in my but I never read it. Well, that's my problem. So that's why I'm trying to the assignments that we have right now, the read extra resources. What I'm doing good, trying to do it so that I will be able to again to understand the passage. My witness reading other resources.
Yeah. So the studying part, that would be maybe the studying part would make that more challenging than for you. Yeah. Berlio, how about you?
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think, sir, I am weak all of those three. But my weakest portion, sir, is my preaching because sometimes I forgot the verses where I can get the main points and the sub points. Sometimes I forget that to mention, like in our workshop, I forgot to mention the verses where I can find because sometimes it seems that I assume that they know already the verses where I
Yeah,
can find
yeah.
the text. Sometimes there is an assumption during preaching, and also I have monotone in preaching. Usually, I am in monotone. but sometimes I try to, what's that, to improve by God's grace. My weakest point, sir, is my public speaking.
Hmm.
Mm.
Would you say in both do you mean English or also in Cebuano when you speak?
In English, sir, I'm struggling because it's good if we speak in our vernacular, but still I'm struggling, sir, because what's that? Sometimes I have a flight of thoughts. I can't finish my. If I will speak an illustration, sometimes I cut in the middle. Usually, if my audience they laugh, then sometimes I distracted when the audience laughing. That's why I would say that I'm struggling in public speaking because sometimes I am distracted with my audience. I'm easily distracted, sir.
Yeah.
Then usually, sir, I have 3 to 5 minutes before I preach, especially when I am new in that area, new in that stage. I need to fight with my stage, what we call that? Stage, uh, in our language, sir,
Stage
may
fright.
kaba pa. Oh, yep.
Stage fright.
Oo. Sometimes I'm struggling with that. I need to post. Usually, sir, here in our city, we have privilege to speak in the city hall every Monday during flag raising. They give us 30 minutes a privilege to speak
Hmm.
the word of God. Then I have, I think, even though I'm always, before I'm sharing the word of God there, then I'm struggling for 2 to 3 minutes before I get fire to deliver my message, to deliver God's message. I'm struggling with that, sir.
Hmm.
The, I am, according to one of my co-pastors, slow starter. I'm slow starter, sir. I need a warm up.
Hmm.
That's I'm struggling, sir. But in our local church, sir, I'm okay because I'm familiar with the OGs and
Yeah.
I mean the congregation. But outside, I'm struggling. Even in TIA, sir, I am struggling
Yeah.
because my OGs is usually pastors. uh,
Yeah. It's a tougher crowd.
then they will critic, sir. Right after. Actually, sir, I'm struggling, sir, in delivery.
Yeah, um, I bring this up because, it is important that, again, we want to try to improve in every area, but it's important we understand where our weakest area is because then we should take steps to improve it, right? I mean, of course, doing it, practicing will help. Doing the TEA, the preaching labs will help, but also, consider other steps on your own. Uh, One thing that I have found, a couple things, because communication, I was trained as an engineer, not a communicator. So the studying part, I didn't have as hard a time with. I mean, it's not easy, but it came a little better to me because as an engineer, I'm used to problem solving. So I kind of would see a text like a problem to solve. Okay, I got to figure out what he's saying. and even articulating it. The Lord's allowed me to have decent writing skills, but the communication part was something I really have to work at. And so for me, what I did and what I still do is I always practice before I deliver it. I'll write it out and then I'll practice it. Just I'll go in a room and I'll read it out loud as if I'm preaching it because that helps me. I can hear what it sounds like, and then I can try to make notes to myself or change things to try to improve in my speaking. Also, recording it and watching it. Very painful, but very helpful because there's things that you don't realize you're doing or saying or not doing or not saying that that you need to work on. And so that that's one. And then another area to think about for improving in your ability to communicate is to have people in the congregation give you feedback. You know, people that are mature, that you trust, that you know will be helpful. I learned a lot from people as they're listening because, you know, I think it's coming out a certain way and I can improve somewhat on my own by listening and by watching. But really at the end of the day, it is how is it being received by other people? So I think it's the hardest part. It's the most embarrassing part, right? But it's if you want to improve, I would highly recommend doing those things. And then, like I said, maybe some weeks give a few people in your congregation, ask them to take notes and to tell you areas you can improve in. And I think it'll help you. I've gotten the most helpful feedback from people in the congregation who are thoughtful. Not one, there's always people who complain and criticize you know, or say great sermon, but they don't tell you why. I think they're just being not polite. But to have people in your congregation, men and women, who will give you an honest feedback or even just direct them, say, hey, can you listen while to my introduction and just let me know how it is, or can you listen to my illustrations, or can you see if you can follow my outline? Just give them specific things to look for. Come up with your own sermon evaluation sheet. Just simplify it. You don't have to give them the Taya sheet. They're going to go, what? but maybe just give them a simple, did you hear the main point? Or ask just what is the main point? What was the outline? um were the illustrations helpful? Did I do anything that was distracting? I mean, just come up with a simple evaluation and have them fill it out for you. I'm telling you that's going to help you uh,
Thank you. Thank you,
tremendously.
sir.
So consider it for all of us. Like I said, those are things that I did that I found super helpful. Uh, but they're not easy. It's not easy to watch yourself. It's not easy to practice because that takes time. It's not easy to have somebody evaluate you, especially a congregation member. You want to think you're the best teacher in the church, right? Because you're the preacher. But we should all be willing to receive feedback, because the most important thing, guys, is not you being a good preacher just so that people think you're a good preacher. You need to be a good preacher for the sake of the sheep. You need to be good at studying. You need to be good at putting those thoughts together clearly and writing them out. You need to be good at communicating them for the sake of the sheep. So this isn't about you excelling. It's about your sheep growing. And anyway, those are some suggestions that that I would recommend or encourage you about considering. Any final thoughts or questions about that?
Some people they are not observing about or preaching, but some of them they are watching how do we act, how do we behave as a pastor, how do we apply the preaching that we are given to them, but they are looking forward how do we act, how do we respond, and how do we apply the word of God.
Yep. Yeah, that's really the fourth part that I didn't mention, but you're exactly right. It's the character. Um, the Timothy, right? Show yourself an example to those who believe. So certainly our ability to communicate God's word is critical, but also living it out is important as well. That's why Paul would, often talked about giving attention to you remember he said also in Timothy, pay close attention to yourselves. He said, so. All right. Well, thanks for the input, guys, and transparency there. Again, it's one thing to see the weakness or concern. It's another to really do something about it. And so it's like anything in life, right? When we see a problem in our life, it's good to know that problem, but if you don't do anything about it, if you're not proactive and working on it, then it's not helpful. So, um, and I think, again, if we want to be good preachers and teachers and shepherds, then we really need to understand where we are weakest and give attention to that, give effort, take steps to improve it. Obviously, prayer, it's got to be focus of prayer without question, but also in addition to that, we need to take steps. God, be a part of answering that prayer. Let God use you to answer that prayer. If you're passive and say, Lord, I know I'm not a great preacher and I need to work at this, and then you just don't do anything and you just pray about it, that's good that you're praying, but remember, there's always a means in which God works, and he doesn't work through laziness. He works through dependent, diligent men. So make sure you keep that in mind, okay? All
I
right.
want to insert, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Someone said, sir, that during our application, we must raise our voice so that the congregation will listen because it is important for them, for us to give emphasis of what we highlight in our main points. The application is necessary, according to my former teacher. We need to raise our voice so that the congregation must listen because it is necessary for us to apply. That's why, according to him, we need to raise our voice during application. Maybe his background is Pentecostal. Maybe.
Yeah, I think there are different ways to give emphasis. Certainly, raising your voice is one, but it's not the only way. Um, Changing your voice is what's important. Some people speak loud anyway. They just talk loud, like Steve Lawson. He just preaches loud, like strong. But when he slows down or when he lowers his voice, or when he pauses, that gets attention. So it isn't just always, okay, if you want to emphasize, raise your voice. Just start speaking loudly. Do you hear me, fellow brothers and sisters? You know, that's not always the most effective way. Sometimes if you're speaking loudly and have emphasis, and then you pause and quietly say, brothers and sisters, are you listening? Sometimes that gets our attention. So the issue is, I think, changing, variation. And I wrote that on some of your guys' evaluation. Figure out what for you is emphasis, because some guys don't have a loud voice. So trying to go loud, they just start squeaking, you know, or they do something funny because they can't speak loud. So it's not always volume, but it can be pace, speed. It can be going more quiet, pausing. All of those are ways that if you vary your voice, you can. Or there's sometimes, you know, that an earnest tone, like brothers and sisters, are you listening? Do you hear me? Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, that's not yelling, but it's definitely a change in tone that's earnest, right? So there's many ways to communicate emphasis. Certainly volume is one of them, but I used to rely on volume. So I would try to go really loud, but my voice would crack or get hoarse. And people were telling me, Pastor, you sound like you're angry. And I wasn't angry, but because I was trying to raise my voice to a high level, to do that, it came out like, it sounded like I was angry. So I had to change that. So my point is, there's different ways we can emphasize. So don't just think there's only one. And again, this is where feedback is helpful, because for some guys, raising their voice is perfect. You know, it really works. For other guys, not so much, or not as well. So we all need to find what it is that is emphasis for us. So that's a good point to bring up. Yeah. So I'm not saying don't raise your voice. What I am saying though is don't assume that's the only way to get attention or get emphasis. There's other ways to communicate that.
Because I experienced before, sir, when I knew in pastoring, because some of our pastor always shouting, then I try to imitate shouting also.
Yeah.
Then the old woman told me, it is painful to my ears to listen when you shout. Then it seems that I can finish my sermon. I need water, more water during preaching.
Yeah. Cough drops.
That's why I stop in shouting, because my former senior pastor before, the one who trained me in preaching, when we have a low voice, then slowly up, then shouting at then go down according to him, just like that.
Yeah.
Then shouting, then down, shout again, then it seems that also painful in my throat when I shout. Then I try to change when the old woman said to me, it's painful to his ear, because she was used in sleeping during sermon at the middle. That's why I shout also intentionally.
Yeah.
So we can wake up during one. Before my former assignments, then I learned through the years that it is not necessary to shout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you also, sir, for the affirmation.
Yeah. Good. Good thing to bring up. Any other thoughts, guys, or questions,
What
comments?
I learned also about, friction, right? When you shout and your voice will crack or you will be dry, it helps. Like I used to join the choir and then I have this kind of vocalization. And that's why whenever I have this 1 hour speech talking, it's okay for me because because of the kind of vocalization I used to do. Usually every MWE while during my exercise, I have my vocalization also. I'm doing it for my preaching on Sundays. So it helps me a lot when I'm on the stage. Dili mo ako ang voice.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, good. That was a little side trail, but wanted to have us think about that a little bit. So, in considering where we're at here, again, this is just another, I think, a figure you're also familiar with, but just summarizes again the whole process here for the study, preparation, and delivery of expository message. Going from the word to the people. All right. So that's what, and then again, the key part is that exegetical idea, the author's intended meaning. Now, let's just briefly, I want to briefly review with you the first assignment, just to remind you of how to do it and show you an example. And we'll just do this briefly because, again, nothing new here, not adding any new assignments or procedures or anything like that. This is exactly what you've been doing, but we just want to review, remind us of it for epistles. And again, the first step is reading and observing the whole book or the whole letter. And so sorry about that. The whole book or the whole letter. And in this case, you're studying 2 Timothy, so you're going to read through the entire epistle several times. And I recommend at least 8 to 10 times. Also reading it in different translations, and that we could also include, in addition to reading it in Cebuano, looking at these different English translations. Again, remember the goal here is, what's the goal to read and observe? To get familiar with the book through active reading. Okay, so the two key words here, get familiar with a book, that's our objective. And how we do that is active reading. It's not just reading several times, it is being engaged as you're reading, active reading. Okay? And so one of the ways to do that is reading the different translations. Another way to do that is the second part, which is observe the book. So once you've read through several times, now then go back through the book again and make observations. And for most of you, from what I've seen from the assignments you have done, you most of you are doing pretty good with this. There's some of you still, though, that I think are perceive or understand this step to be you're just summarizing verses in the text. And that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is observing. Okay? You're not just going through and repeating what he says or summarizing what he says. This isn't a running commentary. You're not interpreting in this step. Remember, You're just observing. You're noticing things. So what sticks out to you? What catches your attention? Maybe it's something that's repeated. Maybe it's a certain idea that you see frequently. Maybe there's some statement he makes that doesn't make sense, that you have a question about it. Or maybe something he says makes you think about another book that says that. Or something he says makes you think about something else in the passage. Or, some of it could be summarizing, like saying he seems to be saying in this verse, but these are just observations, noticing particular details that are interesting, that are puzzling, that stick out to you, that get your attention. All right. So that's the general idea behind the observations. Now, to do this, make observations. There's two kinds that I want you to remember. Two kinds of observations. The first is making specific observations. That is, there are specific things to look for. And then the second is the general observations. So for this assignment, you're going to read through the letter, the whole letter, several times. Then you'll make note of that. And then do observations. And then observations first make the specific observations. So answer these questions. These are specific things you're looking for. Okay? And you'll notice a lot of them are going to be the same kinds of things you do for the background context. Here, you're just noticing them. In the background context, you give more details. So for example, in this specific observations, you're just going to ask, okay, who's the author? What's his tone? All right. And then who's being written to? Who are the people mentioned? What places are mentioned? All you need to do is list those things. Now, when you do the background context, you'll need to not only indicate what places are mentioned, but what do we know about those places? What people are mentioned? What do we know about those people? What do we know about the author or the audience? Okay. But in this step, when you're making observations, you're just identifying them. I'll clarify that in the example. Do you see any specific themes in the book? What seems to be a focus there? Do you see why the author indicates why he wrote the book? Is there any structure you may notice? Chapters 1 and 2, he seems to focus on this. Chapter 3, he focuses on this. That what words are repeated? Again, synonyms. So these are specific questions you're looking to answer. And then after you've gone through the book answering these questions, then go back through the book again and make general observations. So I would spend, 10 or 15 minutes in each chapter. Again, looking for things that stick out to you, things that interest you, things that are confusing, things you have questions about, things that seem repeated. Okay? There are no rules or requirements for this step except to just identify those things that catch your attention. And the key here is it helps to be actively reading. And in the assignment, I'm going to ask you to make at least 5 observations and ask 2 questions for each chapter of the book. Okay, 2 Timothy has 4 chapters, so 5 observations for each chapter and ask 2, in addition to that, 2 questions. Two questions you have from the chapter. Could be a specific word or a verse. You can do more than this, but at least this amount. Okay? And again, remember, the observation step is not intended to be interpretive. It's to help you begin to draw conclusions. Okay? All right. Well, questions on that? Hopefully that's all review, nothing new. Okay? But I know sometimes we might not remember everything, so it's good to remind ourselves. Any questions on that? All right. Well, what I'd like to do, we'll just do a quick exercise together here. We're going to use Philemon as our example. All right. And I'm just going to ask that we'll read this together, and then I'll just go through some examples of observations for you. just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, okay? So I'm going to break this up. I'm going to ask Kazot, 1 to 5. Brother Alex, can you read 6 through 10? Noor, can you read 11 to 15? And Alan, 16 to 19. And Pastor Arn, can you read 20 to 25? Okay. This is Philemon. All right, Kazo.
Philemon, verse 1. Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, and Timothy, our brother, to Philemon, our beloved brother and fellow worker, and to Aphia, our sister, and to Archippus, our fellow soldier, and to the church in your house. Grace to you and peace from our God and Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank my God always, making mention of you in my prayers, because I hear of your love and of faith which you have toward the Lord Jesus and toward all the saints.
And I pray that the fellowship of your faith may become effective through the knowledge of every good thing which is in you for Christ's sake. For I have come to have much joy and comfort in your love, because the hearts of the saints have been refreshed through you, brother. Therefore, though I have enough confidence in Christ to order you to do what is proper, yet for love's sake, I rather appeal to you, since I am such a person as Paul, the aged and now also a prisoner of Christ. I appeal to you for my child Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my imprisonment.
Formerly was useless to you, but now is useful both to you and to me. I have sent him back to you in person. That is sending my very heart, whom I wished to keep with me, so that on your behalf he might minister to me in my imprisonment for the gospel. But without your consent, I did not want to do anything, so that your goodness would not be in effect by compulsion, but by your own free will. Perhaps he was for this reason separated from you for a while, that you would have him back forever.
You're muted, Alan.
No longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother, especially to me, but how much more to you, both in the flesh and in the Lord. If then you regard me a partner, accept him as you would me. But if he has wronged you in any way or owes you anything, charge that to my account. I, Paul, am writing this with my own hand. I will repay it, not to mention to you that you owe to me even your own self as well.
Yes, brother, let me benefit from you in the Lord. Refresh my heart in Christ. Having confidence in your obedience, I write to you, since I know that you will do even more than what I say. At the same time, also prepare me a lodging, for I hope that through your prayers I will be given to you. Epaphras, my fellow prisoner in Christ Jesus, greets you, as do Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, Luke, my fellow workers. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit.
All right. Let's do this. All right, see if I can make this work here. All right, let me just show you by way of review here the here, let's jump over. Let's do this. Sorry, guys, give me a minute to set this up. All right. Okay. All right. Can you see my whole screen here now? Okay. Thanks for your patience. All right. So here on the left, the right is just the text by Lehman. On the left, this is the assignment 5.8. Okay. So this is the first written assignment. Assignments 5.1 to 5.7 are all the reading assignments. The first written assignment is to read and observe the book of 2 Timothy. And so I put here, as I will do for every assignment, here are the instructions. And then I'll give you an example. So here's the example from Philemon. So we just read it. I just wanted you to be familiar with it. Now here's the assignment. If we were to do it for Philemon, you're going to follow this exact same format for 2 Timothy. Okay? So in this case, I said I read through Philemon 18 times in the different translations. It's short, so I read it a lot of times. And then here's the observations. Again, remember, first, identify and make specific observations. So I put here each of them. So who's the author? Notice I just put Paul. And then Timothy is also listed, right? We have Timothy as well listed with Paul. And that's it. I don't put anything else about him. I maybe put a comment here, but that's it. We're not going into a bunch of detail. We're just looking for specific things. Who's being written to? All right. Well, I noticed to Philemon. Okay. To Aphia, to Archippus, and to the church in your house. So I just noted that over here. And then I also put the verse number. And again, that's all. I didn't put more details yet. That'll be the background context. In the background context, you'll go into, okay, what do we know about Aphia? What do we know about Archippus? What church is he talking to here? What is said about the recipients in this letter? What is said about Paul in this letter? So that'll be for the background context. For the observations, we're just noticing who the author is, who the recipients are. Are there any other people mentioned in the book? And then notice I put their names down here. And I put a brief comment. Onesimus, a slave who became a believer. Epaphras, a fellow prisoner. But that's it. I'll do more details when I do the background context in the next assignment. But for this one, I just put the basic. What places are mentioned? Well, in this book, no places were mentioned explicitly. What seem to be the themes? And again, I'm not going into a detailed analysis here. It's just after reading this several times, what seems to stick out to me as the key themes or the focus in this letter? And I just put forgiveness and fellowship. Okay. Now you may be wrong. Those may not be the key themes, but it's just what from your reading several times, now that you're familiar with the letter, what seems to be. Again, guys, remember, this is just to encourage active reading, that you're just thinking about it. You're not just passively reading through the passage, but it's the active reading. So these questions are just intended to make us think a little bit about that. All right. Does the author indicate why he wrote the book? So I just put down what I thought based on that. Do I notice any structure in the book? So I look back and see, can I figure out an outline for the book? And this is what I put together just from reading it several times. Again, this may be wrong or not fully accurate, but right now I'm just doing it to encourage active reading. What words are repeated, including synonyms? So these are words that I picked up reading through the letter. Okay? So those are specific. That's the specific observations. Now, after I've done that, I go back through the letter and I make general observations. You're going to do this for 2 Timothy. And again, this is just anything that sticks out to you. And notice here for Philemon, I've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, about 25 observations. And many of them are questions. Notice I also ask questions. Who is Aphia? What is meant by faith toward all the saints in verse 5? And notice I put a verse number. Everything I put down, I put a verse number next to it, or most of these things, right? So do that as well. Put a verse number with it. Verse 11, how would Onesimus be useful to Philemon? What does in the flesh mean? But I don't just ask questions. I also make comments. It seems Paul led Philemon to the Lord. Epaphras is referred to as a fellow prisoner. So these are just things that stuck out to me. These are the general observations. Okay? And that's it. That's what you need to do for 2 Timothy. So I just put space for you to do that here. All right? Read through the book. How many times did you read it? What translations? Make specific observations. Just fill that in. And then make general observations again for each chapter. And I put make at least 10 observations, ask 4 questions. Okay? Notice I made 25 observations from Philemon in probably about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay? So you'll be able to do this. It just take a little time, probably 10 or 15 minutes a chapter. Make at least 10 observations and ask 4 questions, okay? Now, for your assignment, guys, when you go to Canvas, right, as you know, you'll go to Canvas, let me just do that real quick. So, right, you're ready to start your study of 2 Timothy. Okay, you're going to go to Canvas, Module 5, Preaching 5. All right, and then you're going to go to, okay, assignments. Just click assignments over here. And then I'm going to look for, okay, read and observe 2 Timothy. So I'm going to do that. Oh, it looks like I need to change the due dates here. Okay, start assignment. You guys know this drill. Now I'm going to go, okay, I want to upload the file. Okay, so I'm going to, or download it. So here's I'm going to download it here. This is the exact sheet that I showed you. Okay. So I'll grab it. It's got the Philemon example, then the space to do my assignment, and then I can download this, save it, and then do the assignment on here. Now, one thing I would appreciate if you guys could do, you're welcome to, you can leave all of this, the example here, but actually if you could just delete it and just turn in for me the 2 Timothy part, that would be helpful. You don't have to leave the example in, just copy this file, make a new file just for 2 Timothy, delete all this stuff from Philemon and the assignment instructions, just delete all that and just give me the assignment here for Second Timothy, okay? That will make it easier. Some of you leave all of this in, and I won't grade you down for it, but then I gotta go, through all of this to get to your assignment. So just do that. So then you can download this assignment, work on it, and then of course when you're done, you'll go back to upload. You'll upload your file, right? As you guys know, you'll upload your answers here, okay? And then hit submit. All right. Questions on that?
It's clear, Pastor Tim.
All right, good. Hopefully now when we go through these assignments now, hopefully this will be review and things will be a little clearer in your mind now that we've been doing this for a while together. But I still think it's helpful to review the assignment. So next week, Lord willing, we'll focus attention on the next assignment, and then also we'll do a little bit of the diagramming. And I'll start helping you out with the two assignments, the connector words and the diagram of the letter as well, okay? Now, for those of you that, you got some other assignments to do first to catch up, you know, if it's a couple months before you get to this assignment in First Timothy, that's fine. You're welcome to start with and do the Second Timothy. You're welcome to start with doing the Module 5 assignments if you want. I just gave you a recommended order to do stuff in. You guys can change it around. Just be making progress. So if it's fresh in your mind, you want to just do the Second Timothy, I would, recommend go ahead and do that this week. You can work on that and then go back and try to do a little bit on your previous assignments. If you want to do it that way. I'll leave that to you. That's your decision. If not, if you want to do all the previous assignments first, and then you don't remember everything about this assignment in Second Timothy, you've got the video here. I'll have it. Oh, that's the other thing I'll show you here before we go. Again, on Canvas, I'm going to put all the videos, so if you go to the home page, okay, it's going to look like the others. And notice the big font. I put it in big font again. The link to download all course files. This will be the main place. So if you don't know what to do, where to go, just hit that one. And that's going to have, it's got the syllabus here for the student, and then the teacher syllabus are already here. I'm going to put the class notes from this session. I'll put the video here, and then I will also put the assignment link as well. Okay, so there'll be all of that. Everything will be here if you can't find it elsewhere. Same as what I've done before. All right, just hit that link to download all course files. Okay. Questions, comments, cries of despair, suffering? Okay, well, it's good to be back together. I look forward to spending the next couple months with you guys. And if you run into any questions on your assignments, of course, you can just message me and ask. I'd be happy to help. Okay?
Pastor Tim,
Yes.
I'm reminded of the book with you, which you said that you asked permission to print. Maybe we can have also a PDF file so that we will not be carrying extra load every time we go places.
For the reading assignments?
Yes. The book you said that
Oh,
you ask permission that you can print it.
yeah. I'll see what they let me actually send a message right now to Sean. I think he has a PDF version that's password protected. So if let me send him a note if I can find him here. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, I'll write him that note then. Thanks for the reminder. But I believe he told me he does have a PDF version. It's just password protected, and you cannot give it to anybody else. All right? Please. It's just for students in the class. That's what Mike Fabarez, he graciously gave us access to his file, and with the promise that we only give it to students in the program. All right. So that's, but I'm pretty sure we have that. So I'll try to get that to you as soon as we can. All right. Just for you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pastor Tim.
All right. Anything else? And I did ask Pastor Sean about the MacArthur Study Bibles. So if you guys are graduate, that will be a gift from Taya to you, the MacArthur Study Bible. So we've got some we can get some copies for you as a graduation present. So um, so that was glad to hear that. Okay.